Let's take a closer look at the trends of the last 3 decades. To illustrate this, I've asked several members of the Common Security Club here in Boston to help me make a human graph. Imagine that we've lined up everyone in the United States from the lowest income person to the highest income person and divided them into 5 equal-sized groups, or quintiles. So each person here represents about 22 million households. The bottom fifth are households with incomes under $27,000. The next fifth, the second fifth, are household incomes of between $27,000 and $47,000. The middle fifth, household incomes from $47,000 to $71,000. The next fifth, household incomes $71,000 to $109,000. And the top fifth, household incomes over $109,000. We're going to look at the changes of incomes for each of these fifths since the late 1970s to the present. And for each step that I'm going to ask them to take is equal to a 10% increase in real income. So Catherine, the bottom fifth, would take 1/10 of one step, just a baby step, representing a 1% increase in real income since the late 70s. The next fifth would take almost a full step, about an 8% increase in real income. The middle would take a step and a half forward, about a 15% increase in real income. The next fifth would take 2.5 steps forward. Joanne representing about a 25% increase in real income since the late 70s. And Sarah, representing the top fifth, would take 5.5 steps forward. She saw her incomes since the late 70s go up over 55%. But let's break out the top 5%. Dax represents households with incomes over $191,000, the subset of Sarah. He would take another 3.5 steps forward for an 80% increase in real income. But let's break this out even further. The top 1% of households. And Paul, if you could come stand here. Paul, representing the top 1% of households, household incomes over $350,000. Frankly, the room isn't big enough for this illustration. Paul would take another 11 steps forward. Almost a 200% increase in real income since the late 70s. I've asked everybody to come back to the starting line just so we can look at the difference between the last 30 years and the 30 years after World War II, from 1947 to 1977. During that period, what happened to each of these fifths? The bottom fifth actually took 11 steps forward, seeing their real incomes go up over 110%. Pretty much everybody else saw themselves go up 9 or 10 steps. There really was a rising tide that lifted all boats. So what does this have to do with the economic crisis? The last 30 years, we saw that the bottom 60%, their real incomes have pretty much stayed flat or fallen. So how have people survived? They've survived by borrowing and by working more hours. So the growth of the last 30 years has really been built on borrowing for consumption. Whereas the 30 years after World War II, growth was built on real wages going up. That's one of the major differences between the 50s, 60s, and 70s and the current period. There's another important part of the story, which is how the concentration of wealth has contributed to the economic crisis. For the last 30 years, wealth has concentrated in the top 5%, the top 1%, even the top 1/10 of 1%. That's where the great pools of wealth have gone. And that top 5% has looked out and said, how are we going to invest our money? Where can we invest our funds? And people have taken a portion of their wealth. And Dax, just imagine, what an investment advisor would recommend is that you take a portion of your wealth and put it in very conservative, low-risk investments, that you take a portion of it and put it in long-term growth stocks, but then you take a portion of your money, because you can afford to lose some money, and put it into very high-return, high-risk investments. That's where the action is. And to do that, you need to come through this door over here marked casino. That concentration of wealth is what's created an enormous demand for the whole shadow finance system, hedge funds, derivatives, private placement investments, the desire to earn fantastic returns, 20% returns year after year, or the clients of Bernard Madoff, 10, 12% returns year after year. You can't get those kinds of returns in the real economy. You need to come into the casino economy. So at the very top of the economic inequality ladder, the concentration of wealth has also contributed to the economic crisis by fueling a speculation binge, first in technology, then housing, then commodities like oil.